This is how you build a fourplex, even if you've never built a home or a fourplex ever before. There are 5 simple steps to building it. We're gonna go over all 5 today, but we're gonna start from the beginning and we're gonna go through the entire process of buying a piece of land and building a fourplex. And yes, we're gonna talk about money. Now, one of the biggest mistakes most people make is they function with their eyes closed. And when they walk into any project, what I mean by their function with their eyes closed is they haven't underwritten the project to see the financial viability if it works. Now, in today's current market, with the cost of money being so inflated and because of high expenses with labor, materials, and everything else, you have to make sure that you can cover the debt on the asset. And that is more important than any aspect of the project, including construction costs, because they all kind of lay hand in hand. But at the very end, when you stabilize this asset and you're renting it, does it afford itself? Can it stand on its own 2 feet? And so people always ask me, say, Jerome, what does banking and lending have to do with fourplexes and the construction and how to build them? It has everything to do with everything when it comes to building them. And the reason why is if you can't get it stabilized, you shouldn't be building it. And so everything starts in the underwriting. And what I need every single person watching today to realize and understand is that the build process is simple. The construction process is simple. You have to think about it this way. How many people around the world have bought an old beat up home and renovated it to live in it for themselves, not even for a profitable exit, but they buy a home that's less than perfect and they renovate it? And if you think about the quantity of people that have done that successfully, it's not a hard endeavor. Now, they may have had issues with subcontractors not knowing what they didn't know. They may have had issues with budgets not knowing what they didn't know. They may have had issues with the actual construction, architecture, and design elements that they didn't know. And even in spite of that, they still got it done. If you take a look at fix and flips and how many people take on fix and flips as their very first endeavor in real estate, you'll realize that fix and flips are tangible. They can be done. Now, are they lucrative? I'm not a big fix and flip fan. If I thought they were that lucrative, I'd be doing it. The reason I don't do fix and flips is because I don't like them. I think that they're crazy. I think it's like playing Russian roulette. I think you have a 6-chamber gun and you're going to have something catastrophic happen at some point in time or another that's going to cost you money. I still have not been put in that position in 28 years doing the ground up game with single family homes. And so when we talk about fourplexes, I want you to look at this from an underwriting perspective, and I want you to look at it from an ease perspective, because if the vast majority of people have done those 2 things, remodels or value add, to do a flip in a single family home, doing a ground up build is super simple, and especially in the fourplex game. Now, one of the things that I love about fourplexes is that you have a larger opportunity to exercise up to 2 different business models, okay? 2 different business models. We'll hit on both, but we really want to talk about the how to build a fourplex, okay? And I want to give you resources today that'll allow you to do that. I want to give you lending resources. I want to give you building resources, ideas of styles, and how to go in and pick demographical areas. We're going to go over all of that today, but here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, you have to realize that the ground up construction game holds the same variables on the vast majority of every single build. Now, is there a caveat to that sometimes? Yes, there is, but the consistency of the construction that's going down is consistent across the board nationwide, and the process of going in and building ground up from the foundation to the finished roofing, the trim out, and all the fixtures is very similar. Now, when we look at it from a single family to fourplex perspective, there's a lot of similarities, okay? So one similarity is lending, okay? This is a fourplex is considered a residential dwelling, okay? Now, for all intended purposes for banks and lending, the banks are looking at a 4-unit apartment complex as a home. Now, let me get very clear here. When you get into multi-unit real estate, I don't think that anybody watching should ever build and hold a fourplex unless you yourself live in it as an owner build. And the biggest reason with fourplexes is because we've owned a lot of them over the years. I thought they were great assets when I first bought them, but what I quickly realized is that 1 unit always seems to be vacant. Secondly, the cost to be able to insure it, to be able to pay property taxes, dump trash, pay water, and then with the vacancy, I never made money. It was like renting a single family home and having one single family rental where you have a mortgage, you have insurance, and then all of a sudden you sit back and you realize that you have a $200-300 profitability every month on a $3,000 per month rent because of all the mortgage insurance, P&I, everything that you have associated with that home basically sucks all the money out of it. And if you ever have a capital repair, everything that you made prior is going to get utilized during that capital repair. Fourplexes are very similar in that regard, but what's cool about a fourplex is when you sell them, they're very profitable to sell. Now let's look at why they're profitable to sell. Now, when we go into these fourplexes, and we'll underwrite some of this, we can look at it two ways, okay? We can look at it from a condominium standpoint, where we could come in and we can parcel Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4. You can sell it based on the revenue of all 4 units, okay? You can do that. Or you can look at it as an individual resale perspective, okay? So you can look at it as a multifamily, and you could sell off the whole thing based on revenue. This is your cash underwriting, okay? That's revenue. Or 2, based on comps. So based on revenue or based on comps, okay? Now, if the revenue perspective like it is today isn't doing well because we have high cap rates and values are down, then we can go in and we can sell it individualized. Now, we don't know 100% what the market's going to do tomorrow. We can pretty well see the direction of where the economy is going right now, but just in case it takes longer for multi-unit real estate values to go up, condo your project. All it is a logistical deal where you go in and you do the paperwork on the front end with the city and municipality and the help of your survey company to come in and parcel each one of these lots to have a different parcel number. Now they function under condo law, and now we can go in and we can sell each of these individually, okay? That way you don't get stuck in a long-term hold on an asset that's not cash producing. Now, if you go in and you live in one, you can do what's called owner occupancy, okay? Now, based on owner occupancy, you qualify for a one-time close loan, and this is called a construction to perm loan, okay? Now, when we go in and we do this owner occupancy and we do a one-time close loan with a construction to perm loan, here's what lands up happening. We can go out and through FHA, we can get a 95% leverage to go out and build these fourplexes. You can only do this banking parameter on a 1 unit, a 2 unit, a triplex, or a quad, a fourplex. That's it. Once you go in and you do more than 4 units, you go into a 5th or 6th unit, you're automatically in a commercial-based loan. Based on commercial lending, this FHA lending disappears. Now, you go in, there are different construction to perm loans, but you go in with an owner occupancy, one-time close loan on this construction to perm, your interest rate is typically better because you'll go in and retain maybe a 7.3% construction loan that goes straight into a perm loan. Now, typically is no early payout penalties on these loans. You need to know that. Why? Because if there is early payout penalties, you need to know what that early payout penalty is. Now, a lot of times these mortgages get assumed by a different third-party bank that lands up owning them by the time you're done with construction. The bank you're at, they land up taking on the loan, they sell the note to somebody else, and then that bank lands up getting revenue from you, okay? Now, when we go in here, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the overall cost to build this, and let's talk about demographical areas, okay? Now, we have a 4-unit apartment complex. We can either comp it out, guys. We can comp it out, meaning that if each one of those units is selling for $297, we want to know what they're building at $297, okay? $297,000, 297K, 297K, 297, 297. Okay, now they might not all be all perfect like that. The prices might vary slightly, but the thing is can we afford to build it? Okay, and what's selling at $295? So let's take a look at this from an underwriting perspective, and let's talk about the how-to to build this. Okay, now for those of you guys that have no construction experience but want to do it on your own, you are still able to do a one-time close construction to perm loan, and you're allowed to build the actual asset by yourself. You can do what's called an owner build in order to make that financially viable. A lot of people watching are very capable of doing this. If you've ever done a remodel or a fix and flip, this is substantially easier. You will be qualified based on your experience to go in and do a single family build related to these fourplexes because they're residential properties, okay? Now, let's look at this from an underwriting perspective two different ways. Now, if we go in and we know we sell 297, we sell each unit for $297,000, okay? That's times 4. Now they're sold, okay? These are sold. Now, that is equivalent to 297 times 4. That's 1,188,000 total value. Okay, now let's underwrite this two different ways. But before I do that, what I want to do is I know what the value is based on comps. This is comp based, okay? Let's go value based on revenue. Okay, so if we take the revenue of this asset, let's build out our build, okay? So we have 4 units. It's small. What does that market need most? Let's say that market needs more 2-2s. So now let's say that 100% of them are 2-bed, 2-bath units, okay? Now, let's say that you're in a demographical area that has a lot of kids, and these people need room for these kids, okay? And so if you're in a high family area, you're gonna wanna go in and put yourself in a position where you service that community. So I would just build all 4 as either a 2-2. You may even wanna do a 3-2, a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-bed, 2-bath, okay? Now, let's say for sake of example, these 2-bedroom units are 1,250 square feet. You got to make them a little bigger to hold the value of comps on these fourplexes. I recommend that you don't just go out and just say, hey, well, Jerome said on a camera that I could build these things at 1,250 square feet. What is needed in your area? If it's a college area, you may not need that much square footage. Are you in a smallish demographical area? Are you in a city that's less progressive? Are you in a city that has more affluency and you're around families, churches, hospitals, schools, and you need to make sure that you can accommodate those? We might go in and do 1,250 square foot units, okay, times 4. Now, when we go in and we multiply that times 4, we take 1,250. We have a total of 5,000 square feet that we're building. Very similar to a single family home. This is abbreviation for square foot. Because if you go out and you build a 2,700 square foot house, and this is the under air square footage, this is a house, and you have a 3-car garage, that 3-car garage, ladies and gentlemen, if you go in, that 3-car garage will be 1,000 square feet. Okay, so we have 2,700 square feet. This will be 1,000 square feet for the garage. Back patio is going to be about 700 square feet. Front is going to be about 300 square feet. This will be front. These are porches. Okay, your little patios. Okay, that's 4,700 square feet. It's the exact same undertaking as a 5,000 square foot fourplex. Okay, now, no difference. You have 3 extra kitchens. That really is the only difference between building this and building this fourplex right here, okay? Now, we have 5,000 square feet. What is needed in the area? The reason I like residential fourplexes is people say, what can you build multifamily for? They're like, oh, it's over $200 a square foot. And I sit back and go, this project cannot afford $200 builds per square foot. But you know what it can afford? $150 a square foot, $135 a square foot. And in fact, I just went over this with one of my community members this morning, where he sat back and he goes, I can't get this thing to pencil. Every time I go back in, it doesn't pencil. And I look at his build costs and I look at what he had, and he was comparing it to my 100 unit build cost, where I have to put in turning lanes and inlets, outlets, egress, ingress. I have a ton of transformers, yard lines. I end up having to go in and put myself in a position where I have to connect to stormwater. I have to connect to the sewer, the gas, the electrical, the extra transformers. All of that stuff adds up. Of course, you're going to be at $200 a square foot. But on this, on a little fourplex, your impact on roadways is almost zero. There is some impact, but it's very minimal. And so when we go in and we rent these fourplexes, we could build at $135 a square foot. Let's say that we have to build at $145 because you have to hire a contractor, okay? So if we go in, we multiply this 5,000 square feet, and if you hire a contractor and you're even at $145 per square foot, you're gonna do 5,000 times 145. So equals, so 5,000 times 145, that's $725,000 is my cost to build, okay? Now, we're gonna have the land on top of this. So if we go in and we look at the land, how much is land selling for in that area for a small fourplex. Now, I'll tell you, I typically won't spend more than $15,000 to $20,000 per unit. So that lot to me is only worth about $100,000. Let's say that it's more expensive and it's $125,000. So if we go in and we do 125 for your land, we're going to add that to this bottom line. That's $850,000. So $850K all in. Okay. Now, when we go in and we look at this, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go in and we're going to look at this $850,000 expense, and we're going to put this $150,000 expense against this and the value of the asset, provided that we use an income model, which we'll talk about here in a second. Okay, so here is our cost, $850,000. If we have an additional $30,000 of carrying cost to get the construction lending, that comes out to be $880,000 with that construction lending. Now, when we go in, we're going to go in and let's get to pull some of these numbers. We have 5,000 square feet. Okay, so we have 5,000 square feet and we have 4 2-2s. Okay, so now we have a 5,000 square foot deal. Okay, apartment complex, four units. Okay, so this is 5,000 square feet. Okay, this is total. Now, if we have, let's say for sake of example, we have 4 4s, this is a fourplex, 2 2s. Let's say that we're getting $2,200 a month for rents. That's still pretty modest for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit. So if we go in, we multiply that times 4, it's going to be a total of $8,800 is going to be our monthly burn. Okay, times 12. So if we have 88 times 12, that's going to be 105,600. This is annualized. This is per year. Okay. Now, let's say that it takes us 20% to be able to go in and expense property taxes, insurance, and all the maintenance expenses. So we go in, we have 105,600 times 25%. That's going to give us a total NOI of $79,200. Okay. Now, this is our NOI. We take this NOI and we do it based on interest rates. Value equals NOI divided by cap rate. Okay. Now, so we want the value. We have our NOI, $79,200. We're going to divide this by the current market cap rate, and we're going to look for a stabilized loan on this thing. We want to go in and let's say that we get a stabilized loan, do a buy down, we get it at 5.5% cap rate and interest rate. Okay. Now, when we do that, we're going to go in and divide this for our value. So we take 79,200, we divide this by 0.055, gives you a value of 1,440,000. Okay. Now, when we look at this from a value perspective based on revenue, what's better, 1.188 or 1.440? Obviously the 1.440. So now, if you're going to sell it, you need to know what this is going to stabilize for. Because if you sell it for that price, or even if you keep it, can you refinance it to either get your money out or to be able to, at the very least, just stabilize the asset and put yourself in a position where you can just cash flow? Because everything at the end of the day is about the cost segregation and the depreciation of the asset. And it's also about cash flow. It's always about cash flow. So now, when we go in and we look at this, we're looking at these two valuations. 1.188 doesn't look too bad. Our overall cost to build is $880,000. Can we afford to build it under this scenario? Okay, so if we sell it as fourplexes based on those comps and those resale prices, this is what it looks like. Okay, we take $1,188,000. Okay, now when we go in here, we multiply that times 80% loan to cost or loan to value. Let's look at it from a value perspective. Let's say that we go in here and we want to make sure we can stabilize this. We take 20% because this is going to be 80% loan to value. Okay, so times 0.8, that tells us that it's $950K is going to be our price that we're going to need from the bank. Okay, that's what we're going to be giving from the bank. Okay, that's not what we need from the bank. That's actually what the bank is giving us. This is what the bank is giving to us based on an 80% loan to value based on this underwriting right here. Okay, is that more than $880,000? The answer is yes. They're going to take a reduction in proceeds for your interest reserve, which you're going to need out of this. Can we build it? Yes. But now we have this exact same scenario. Let's go back in here off this other value. Okay. So if we go with and we take 1,400,000, I'm gonna take 80% of $1,440,000. 1,440,000 times 0.8. That's $1,152,000. And all we need is we need $880,000. Okay. Now, with that said, is from the bank, we want to make sure that we still get a good interest rate and we still put ourselves in a position where we can go in and put downward leverage. Because I will build these almost for free, where I make no money, no cash out, no nothing. See, doing a build like this, it's worth doing the FHA just because you'll have 95% loan to cost and it's very easy. Even the spreadsheets are easy to fill out for the bank. And the spreadsheets that we fill out, our budget spreadsheets that we fill out for the bank, these are very important. These are important because these are our buckets in order to build and hit this $850,000 build cost. Okay. So if we go in based on this, the bank is willing to give us $1,152,000. All we really need from the bank is $880,000. Okay. So both are viable. Obviously, under these market circumstances, I'm going to sell it based on revenue. I don't really care about the parceling of the actual property. I don't really care about this, having 4 units. The cost to build this is very modest. You could still do it at a very effective rate, and you don't have the offsite infrastructure costs to make this happen, okay? Now, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, building a multifamily apartment complex really comes down to the underwriting. Can you get lending on it? Most people will go out and complicate how and where they're going to go out and get lending for these 4-unit apartment complexes. A lot of people want to go out and try to get lending before you're ready to even apply for lending. You have to have a real project put together first. And the only way that you're going to get a real project put together is by knowing what is in that market, what's available, what's needed, and what your competition is. What is like property look like in your given area? And if you go in and if like property in your given area has white countertops and fancy lights, that's what you're going to build. You're going to build white countertops with fancy lights. If you go in, it's super simple. They're using Formica tops. You're not going to put Formica tops. You're going to put granite or quartz because we won't let you put garbage like that in your units, even if it affords it. Because of the maintenance perspective, you're going to end up spending more and it's going to kill you long term. So we want to make sure that when we go in, we know what product we're getting. Now, all you have to do to know what product you need to build is call the small management companies around town. Which are the small ones? There's a lot of them, guys. There's a lot of them. You have to realize that there is no lack of professionals on this earth. The only thing there's a lack of on this earth is action taking. And so you have to position yourself that you go in and you communicate with the professionals that have the data. And the professionals that have the data for multifamily and little fourplexes are in fact, the small property management companies that are local. And so what's good to your benefit with small management companies is they also give you the ability to go in and negotiate with the physical owner small and minimal terms to make sure that it fits our business model and ultimately at the end helps keep you profitable from start to finish. Now, ladies and gentlemen, fourplexes are super simple. I'll sit up here and I'll talk about the underwriting. It looks like a massive undertaking because of the underwriting. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. I promise that when you get into this, one of the biggest things is positioning yourself where you can underwrite the value of the asset and the cost to build. Those two things will protect you financially because the build itself is super, super simple. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't take much, and 99.9% of it you can find not just on my Google page and on my YouTube page, but all over the vast majority of the United States because it's being done everywhere and there's a massive shortage for housing. So ladies and gentlemen, don't restrict your opportunity and your ability to grow and leverage small parcels like this to go in and build multifamily, even if it's a small one, for your very first deal. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go in. There's 2 videos that I did when I was on the Clever podcast, I'm going to recommend 2 multifamily underwriting videos right behind this video when I was over at the Clever Investors office. And I'm going to give you guys the resources of what you need to take into consideration when you're building multifamily. Until next time, click and subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that thumbs up button, and always go out and continue compounding your success.